Hey guys, Coach Cam here with a little video about saving your wrists and your elbows when you're doing thrusters, push press, push jerk, maybe even front squats. Yeah, so I'm going to show you a couple options here for scaling or actually substituting in different pieces of equipment if your elbows or wrists get really sore in the front rack position anytime you have the bar on the front side of your body. Now, a lot of people are pretty hesitant to switch out the object they're using, so switching out from a barbell to dumbbells or kettlebells, but that actually is a really good idea just to alleviate the stress on your wrists and your elbows until they can kind of catch up, until your mobility can kind of catch up with the demand of the exercise. So I'll kind of explain or take a look at what the front rack looks like with a barbell and then also with dumbbells and kettlebells and show you what the difference is and how that takes the stress off of your wrists. So with our barbell, our front rack position relies on a nice high elbow position and having the bar on the fingers and the elbows here, seating the bar on the shoulders. Now for a lot of people, you can see how that wrist angle is quite accentuated. The lower my elbows are, the more that wrist angle actually increases. So if I can develop a better elbow position, then it's going to be a little bit easier on my wrist. Also, controlling the tension in your hands is a big factor. A lot of people have a lot of tension in their hands when they have a front rack position. Try to relax your hands a little bit. But like I say, if this is really problematic for you, then the best option in the short term is actually to try dumbbells or kettlebells when you've got a shoulder overhead or thruster movement. So first off with the kettlebells, you can see when I rack them here, my front rack position, my wrist is almost neutral, which means almost straight line through my hand and my wrist. If it's only a slightly bent in there. So when I do my press from here, instead of having that stress to the wrist, it's actually directly through the forearm. So even with very tender wrists, I can do a shoulder overhead movement without too much pressure on the wrist. And it's just as challenging. Typically you're going to be using less weight obviously with your kettlebells, there's a little bit less stability in the movement, but you're accomplishing the same thing generally, which is strengthening the shoulder or the shoulder overhead movement. Same thing with the dumbbells. With the dumbbells, what we do is we rack the back part of the dumbbell on the shoulder, and again you can see the wrist position here is a lot more favorable, especially if you're not very flexible. It doesn't require the elbows to be as high as well. So we can still do our shoulder overhead, but again, there's a lot less stress on the wrists. In the meantime, as we're trying to develop our flexibility in the wrists and shoulders, there's a couple things you can try. I'm going to show you one over here with a dowel. It's a pretty common one. So this really helps if you have a limitation in your lats, in your shoulders, that's preventing the elbows from getting up nice and high. So for me, I do have a lot of tightness in my pecs and my shoulders. It's a big limiter for me. So this is a great stretch for limbering up those areas. Take the dowel with about a shoulder width grip, underhand, elbows on the bench. And what I'm going to try and do is lower my body down between my arms and try to get a stretch out of those lats. You can play around with your wrist width. You can go narrower or wider, find where the main limitation is for you. Ooh, it's quite a stretch. And you'll notice it right away. If your lats are pretty tight, you're going to feel that right away. The other option is working with the barbell itself, and there's a number of ways you can do this, but the easiest way when you're just warming up is to grab a barbell, pop it over your head, and then work on rotating the elbows forward and getting nice range of motion from those elbows and those wrists. With this one, you always want to try and point your elbows more forward as opposed to out. Out here, I'm not getting a real front rack kind of stretch. I'm trying to get them going straight out from the shoulder. And because that bar is supported by my shoulders in that back squat position, there's not a huge amount of loading on the wrists. So it's a great warm up to do prior to getting into a nice front rack position. So that's about it. If you're having issues with the front rack, your wrists are sore, your elbows are sore, try modifying the movements, try the dumbbells, try the kettlebells. You'll still get a great workout, trust me, no problem there. Just you'll have to adjust the total weight that you're using down a little bit with those two. And then in the meantime, try to work on that shoulder movement and that kind of flexibility through your wrists and your elbows by those two exercises I showed you. And hopefully those two things will converge. You'll train yourself up using substituted movements, and you'll improve your mobility, and then those will kind of come together into doing shoulder overhead and front squats and thrusters with minimal pain, minimal discomfort. All right, until next time.